you. I'm used to being lowered down from the ceiling by a rope, while the smoke machine is filling the arena. So feel free to come and use the mosh pit here at any time. A bit of crowd surfing is always quite entertaining during these presentations. I suppose I should probably tell you a little bit what we're going to be doing. I want to take you through some things that are trends in technology. So to look at, to see what's happening with technology. There's a lot of people who will, they're talking about trends in technology. They give you bandwagons to jump on. They say, hey, virals are big. Or woohoo, look at apps. To that, I just tell these people to fuck off. I mean, it really is nonsense when people start saying, hey, look at this great new technology. Because they're encouraging clients and agencies to jump on bandwagons. Everyone else is doing that, therefore we have to be doing that. And that's the exact opposite of what you're doing. This is advertising. We're about being creative. We're about being original. And doing what everyone else is doing is not creative and it's not original. In fact, when it comes to innovation, I teach innovation as well as creativity. What I tell people is what the important thing to do is to, if Facebook come out with a new feature, don't use it. Abuse it, fuck with it, do something it's not meant to do. If you try and break something and do something different, you're going to get noticed. If you just use it for what it's meant to be used for, you're doing what everyone else is doing. So when it comes to new technology coming out, my mantra is fuck with shit. Okay? So you got to do something that is a bit different. Now, please tell me if I'm speaking too fast or too Scottish. I want to make that clear right now. I am not English, okay? I'm Scottish. It's a big difference, all right? Big difference. I wear skirts and get away with it. So I'll tell you a little bit about who I am. This is a very famous man in advertising. This is Sir John Hegarty, who is the founder of BBH in London. We have public arguments quite a lot because we don't necessarily agree with each other, but we're friends. It's all good. I used to be creative director of a bunch of different advertising agencies. And about 3 years ago, I didn't really want to do that anymore. I was getting a little bit frustrated with what I was finding as a creative director. So I decided that I wanted to do this instead, and I set up a company, this company here, Additive, that's all about trying to work with agencies and work with brands to help make them more creative. So I teach creativity, to help them use technology better, and to spot what the new trends are that we can actually, that are our big opportunities in the industry. And I travel all over the world doing this. I was teaching a Hyper Island course in Singapore last month on digital creativity. And I was supposed to be in New York last week, but that's put off to next month. So I'm all over the place. And I'm just basically this bloke that just talks. So lucky you. Eh? I wrote a book last year. I actually wrote it by mistake. I don't know if many people have written a book by mistake. I wasn't intending to write a book, but I just suddenly found that I had one. So I brought this out last year, and there was a student who showed me her copy of the book a few weeks ago. And it's an absolute mess. She claims to have read it 50 times, which probably says that I didn't write it properly in the first place, and she hasn't quite got what it's all about. But my book's all about how the mind works, how we come up with ideas, how to be more creative, how to come up with more ideas and better ideas. I also have a podcast, the Future of Advertising podcast, where I speak to lots of people who are big people in the industry around the world and ask them where they think the future of the industry is going. So my favorite guy that I interviewed used to work with Bill Bernbach in the 1950s, and a guy called George Lewis, and he's just this crazy 82-year-old American. And I thought I was going to go there and get half an hour of him talking. 4 hours later, I was the one who had to say, I think I'd better go now. So that wasn't quite what I expected. I do stupid things on the internet. I've got a site called Goddamn, which is GODD.am. So I bring out about a site a week, and maybe about once a month, one of these things ends up here. So there's a big trend at the moment in American and British advertising about doing memes, and it's all a bit silly things. Let's have a duck-billed platypus walking down a street singing a song. That's our advert. Or let's have a pony that's dancing on top of a cliff. And it's just nonsense. So I created this generator here that it just brings random things together and gives you the content for your next ad. So that's to take the mickey out of these guys. Yep, that's me. I speak, and somebody stole my beach ball. This is actually something I want to show you. I did an experiment a couple of months back. I'm also the contributing editor for an advertising magazine in Britain. And I did an experiment to see if alcohol makes you more creative. And it turns out that it does. Who would have thought? So this is a little film of the experiment that we did.
Here's how it works. We have 18 advertising creatives. We split them into 2 teams. One team is allowed to drink as much alcohol as they want. The other team has to remain sober. They each have 3 hours to work on the same brief. Then we take the work and we get it judged by top advertising creative directors. Then for a second opinion, we put their work to the public to see what they think. And just for the sake of irony, the problem we're trying to solve tonight is binge drinking.
Now touch your nose. With both hands at the same time, touch your nose, that'll pull you over.
So yes, it does turn out, in fact, that alcohol seems to make people more creative. So I don't know if is the bar open? Should it be? I think vodka's all round on the house. So I'm all over the internet thing. I was fortunate enough to have a name that no one can spell, and it means that Google just give me Google. You search for me, they just say, there you go, it's all yours. So I've got loads of stuff all over Google. It's usually me, except for one guy who's also called Дэйв Бирсс, who is the worst competition cyclist in Australia. And if it's those results you get, that's not me. Okay, anything else, it's me. Okay. So I want to sort of take you through some of these trends. The first trend is, it's about cyborgs. It's about people who are putting technology inside themselves. This is what we call Posthumanism, or augmented humanity. This is about people actually trying to become robots. So this is quite incredible. These people are getting magnets put under the skin of their fingers. And it means that if you run your hand over a table, you can tell if there's metal underneath the table. In fact, if you were to run your hand over a wall, you would know if there's an electric cable behind the wall, because you'd be able to feel the vibrations in your finger. Absolutely amazing that people are wanting to do this. I'm actually working on a device at the moment, which is a way of doing this without putting it underneath your skin. So I'm trying to find an electronic engineer to build a circuit for me at the moment. I've got the circuit all designed, and it detects electric fields and magnetism, and depending on the strength of it, it vibrates at different strengths. So you can feel electricity and you can feel metal. Yeah? There's not necessarily much practical use. If you're drilling in a wall and you want to drill a hole, you can go, no, there's metal behind there. Yeah, that's helpful. Apart from that, it's just interesting. There's one of the things that I find with my device, I've got a version of the device that I've created in a glove that round about my Mac, I can feel where the electricity is flowing inside the computer. And I can feel this bulge round about where the power supply is. There's like a 2-inch bulge. It's like a ball round there that you can feel. And what you can feel is the electrical field around that. It's not actually that useful, but it's interesting. I'm able to feel if a cable is switched on or not. I'm just interested in seeing if we can create extra senses, because that's what these guys are all about, is actually trying to create extra senses. There's another thing that I tried to do with an iPhone, found out you can't actually do it, but I was trying to do it so that you'd be able to take the visible spectrum and you'd be able to flip to infrared and to ultraviolet, because that's like a superhuman thing, being able to see the way insects do or being able to see heat. And it's a way of expanding our senses, making our senses more powerful, or giving us extra senses that humans don't normally have. It's one of the things that we're very much, it's one of the trends. It's basically one of the trends, and you'll see in a second how it is actually. But before that, this is about the size of a cigarette lighter. You put this underneath your skin. So you'd put it underneath the skin of your arm. This here measures your pulse. It measures your blood pressure. Now, you'd be able to put sensors on this as well that would measure how much sugar you've got in your blood, how much salt you've got in your blood, how much of a given drug you've got in your blood. Now, this is coming out at the end of this year, and you'll be able to get this inserted underneath your skin. How many people would do it? Well, you see, it's because we don't have very ill people in this room. If we had very ill people in this room that actually needed to monitor that stuff, and would be safer having that monitoring 24 hours a day, connected to the internet so they can see how their body's responding, then they would go for this. And that is what's about to happen. Within 10 years, we'll be doing body modification that involves electronics. Within 10 years. But our way there, our way to get there, is through the medical community. So what's going to happen, we're going to be seeing this within the next 2 to 3 years. There's going to be more and more devices which actually our electronic devices we'll be getting underneath the skin that we'll be able to get to monitor ourselves. And once that's accepted more, then we'll be moving on to stuff that's more consumer, things like I showed you. Now, I think this is a very interesting area to be, but it's not just about putting things underneath our skin. It's not just as severe as that, because this is part of the same trend. In fact, wearable technology, they're not electronic, but this is wearable technology. Humans invented these. These augment me. These give me powers I don't have, and that's the power to see things that don't just look like a fuzzy blob. And that's a superpower to me, because without these, everything's just a fuzzy blob. So, everyone knows about Google Glass. Does anyone not know about Google Glass? Google Glass, this will connect to your phone. Primarily, first of all, it'll be an Android phone. And it's got a camera in there, and this is a little eyepiece. So you'll be able to look up and to your right and see information about where you are. So it knows where you are, it knows what direction you're facing, and it can say that this underground station you're at here, the next train's in 7 minutes, it's on this line, it takes you to this station. So it can give you bits of information. You can take pictures with it, you can film stuff. How many people here really want to try these out? Just want a shot of them, yeah? Now keep your hand up if you actually think you would use them in real life. Oh, wow. Now that's many more people than usual. Because there's issues with these, and there's a lot of debate. These, wearing these glasses, if you're wearing these glasses and we're talking, is kind of the equivalent of you doing this. Because I don't know what you're doing. If you're looking up and to the right, you've got information, and it's kind of the equivalent of you doing this when we're talking. And it makes me feel, what information does he have that I don't have? Is he looking at something about me? In fact, is he taking a film of me right now? Creepy bastard, run away. So, it starts to raise lots of questions. And I've been trying to work out, if I'm having a conversation with somebody and they're wearing Google Glass, I will probably want to tell them that I would prefer if they took their glasses off while we're having a conversation. Because it either distracts them or it makes me feel as if they've got access to information I haven't got, therefore it's an uneven conversation. We've got lots of stuff to think about here.
Actually, the same thing happened with the smartphones got populated. People were worried that, handing the iPhone, you can record all the conversations, but people don't.
It's slightly different because you can't really do that subtly. Whereas with these, you can control, you can control these with a wink. So you can pretend you've got a nervous twitch. And you can control those with a wink to switch camera on and off and to take pictures and stuff. It's interesting, and it starts to raise a lot of questions. But that's part of the trend. And these are going to be coming out by the end of this year, and they're going to be about 400 euros, I believe, 400 or 500 euros. At the moment, they are 1,500 for early adopters, but these are going to be about 400 euros, which is not very expensive for this kind of technology, I think. Does everyone know about the Nike Fuelband? With Nike Fuelband, where you wear it and it measures your movements, and then it talks to your phone and uploads your activity during the day, and it tells you if you've done enough exercise. Well, Jawbone have brought one out that is actually better, it seems, than the Nike Fuelband. This one here, it measures your movements, but it also, if you've been sat still for half an hour and you haven't moved, it will buzz to tell you to move. Because it's not good for you to be sat still all the time, so it'll buzz and say, come on, get off your bum, have a walk around. It does another thing where, because you move about in your sleep, it can work out what stage of sleep you're at, whether you're in deep sleep or whether you're in light sleep. And it wakes you up at the right time when you're in the lightest stage of sleep. So you say that I want you to wake me up between 7 and 7:15. And during that time, whenever you're in a light stage of sleep, it will vibrate to gently wake you up. And that's the best way to start your day. You feel freshest when you're woken up from a light stage of sleep. These are internet-connected shoes. They're called the No Place Like Home shoes from the Wizard of Oz. The way you activate them is you click your heel 3 times. That's the red tab at the back there, connects it to a satellite. You've already programmed where you want to go. Your left shoe points to the direction you need to go in, and your right shoe tells you how far you've got to go. Isn't that great? I would never wear them, but they're just fantastic, and it just shows the way that people's thinking is starting to go. We would call these Internet of Things devices. Internet of Things. I haven't got it on just now, but I've got one of these watches. This is an internet-connected watch. So when I get an email through to my phone, it actually comes into my watch, and my watch buzzes to say there's an email, and I can actually read the email, if I want to, on my watch. So my watch is internet-connected, and there's an accelerometer in there as well, so it can measure my movements. And people are starting to write apps for this watch. And they say that they believe that Apple this year is about to bring out an internet-connected watch. So that could be quite interesting if they get in the scene. This is a real big thing at the moment, the watches that connect to the internet. And a lot of this comes from the Internet of Things thinking. This is something that IBM talk about, and they've got this pyramid here. Data. We've got loads and loads and loads and loads of data. Data gives us information. Information gives us knowledge. Knowledge gives us wisdom. At the moment, the internet is all about just information with a bit of knowledge. Where we need to be going is wisdom. And let me explain wisdom to you. Does anyone have Google's new app, Google Now, on their phone? Google Now is, it uses, there's not enough real geeks here. Come on, we need more geeks in here. So one of the things that Google Now does is it does thinking on your behalf. One of my friends is creative director of Google in New York, and he was telling me about 3 weeks ago that he got a message from Google Now when he was trying it out in its test phase, and he was in downtown New York, and it sent him a message saying, your next meeting is in 40 minutes in uptown New York. You need to leave in 8 minutes, catch such and such a train that takes you to there, get off and walk. And it gave him the map on where to walk once he got off. Now, that is wisdom, because it's doing thinking on his behalf. Ian didn't have to go in and go, right, where am I going? What line do I need to take? Right, once I'm there, how do I get to the office? It had done the thinking on his behalf by looking in his Google Calendar, then referencing Google Maps, then looking at the underground system and working out how all that stuff added up to see when he needed to leave. That's pretty extraordinary. And it's supposed to be intelligent enough that if there was a problem with that train, it would have found a different train route and told him to leave at a different time according to that different train route. So that's when devices are doing thinking on our behalf. That is wisdom. And that's what we should be aiming at, because that's the stuff that feels like magic. It feels as if we're really helping people. Right, so that's the end of the first trend, is wearable technology and putting things underneath your skin and being a bit of a freak. The next one is the power is shifting to amateurs. It was professionals, it was big companies that created products. Like this thing here is created by Logitech. That's a big company that is invested in creating that. This thing is created by Shure. Shure is a microphone company that's been around for years and years and years, and it's based on the SM58 model. I know, because I used to be a singer in a band. So these are big companies that are creating products, and that's not necessarily the way it is anymore. This watch thing came about on Kickstarter. Does anyone not know what Kickstarter is? Like, do a quick explanation. Where Kickstarter, they call it crowdfunding. So somebody comes up with an idea, and they say, I want to do this idea, but I need, in this case, they wanted $100,000 to be able to make this idea happen. So they say, we need to sell $100,000 worth of these in advance so that we can make this idea happen. And what happened is people really loved this product. They thought this was an amazing idea. So in fact, instead of $100,000, they got over $10 million. So much so that it actually fell off the edge of their screen there. Their screen stops here. So that's crowdfunding. A lot of people think that actually you're investing in a new product, in a new idea. You're not. You're pre-buying. You're pre-purchasing that item. And you're committing to buy that item now and pay for it now. And you might not get it for a year. So this watch took a year between me putting the money forward for this project and me actually getting the watch, was 1 year. So other stuff that's been funded there. This is just about coming to an end at the moment. This is a really cheap 3D printer. It's about $400, which is incredibly cheap for a 3D printer. This is a games console that might actually be in my house by the time I get back. It's about the size of a coffee cup, and it runs on Android, and it's set up to try and compete with PlayStation, Wii, Xbox. So it runs on Android. It's got lots of really good games. You can play every game for free up until a point, and then you have to buy. Some of the games are completely free, but the idea is you don't have to go into a games shop and buy the discs. You don't have to do that anymore. It doesn't make sense. You just go online and you download the game as you need it. So this is trying to really disrupt the games market, and it's got a very good chance of that, because just last week it got lots of funding from some really big companies in America. And also you can see that they raised $8.5 million with this idea, when again they wanted just under $1 million. They wanted just under $1 million, but they raised $8.5 million. This is a satellite that's launching at the end of the year. It's a satellite that's open source, and anyone will be able to try projects out in space on this satellite, which I think is a lovely thing. I've got a friend that I started a business with a few years ago, and he wanted to take this Kickstarter project and do something with music. He was finding, he's a Brazilian guy, he lives in Sao Paulo, and none of the big bands were going to Brazil. And he wanted to see these big bands. So he thought, well, if I can get lots of people saying, I will buy a ticket for them if they come down, then I can go to the band and say, hey, we've already sold on your behalf 3,000 tickets. So he started this off, and within a year he ended up working with some massive bands. So he's working here with Snoop Dogg and with Iron Maiden and some really big bands around the world that they're trying to get pre-purchasing. So what's actually happening is he's planning the tour for these bands through this system by saying, right, cities, who wants these tickets? And if you get enough bookings in a city, you get the band. And it makes complete sense, because it's business. It has to pass a threshold. You have to know you're going to get the audience and the ticket sales. So it's taking the risk out of it for the bands. And then this is slightly scary. This is another thing that's going into the hands of the amateurs.
It's a great time to be a molecular biologist. Reading and writing DNA code is getting easier and cheaper. By the end of this year, we'll be able to sequence the 3 million bits of information in your genome in less than a day and for less than €1,000. Biotech is probably the most powerful and the fastest growing technology sector. It has the power, potentially, to replace our fossil fuels, to revolutionize medicine, and to touch every aspect of our daily lives. So who gets to do it? I think we'd all be pretty comfortable with this guy doing it. What about that guy? In 2009, I first heard about DIY bio. It's a movement that it advocates making biotechnology accessible to everyone, not just scientists and people in government labs. The idea is that if you open up the science and you allow diverse groups to participate, it could really stimulate innovation, putting technology in the hands of the end user.
So she's involved with this here, GenSpace in New York. This is a bioengineering lab for the public. So people go in here and they just try out bioengineering. They're playing with DNA. And they had a course 2 weeks ago that they did, which was called Bioluminescence, Things That Grow, Things That Glow. So they were taking the glowing bit of fireflies and plankton, they were isolating the DNA, and they were putting it into other organisms to make them glow. This is bioengineering. This is stuff that we probably don't want to mess with too much. This is a place where people with no training or understanding of ethics at all are going to try stuff. So this is quite interesting and disruptive. What we're finding is that the big area of innovation, you know, people often say that our generation, I know my generation is above your generation. I know I'm older than you. That's fine. But collectively, our generation are going through the most disruptive point in history, the most disruptive time for innovation in history. Bullshit. We're not. No, if you think about it, right, our grandparents, maybe great-grandparents for some of you, went through a time where they went from horse and cart to the car being invented, to people building roads. Shortly after that, we had the airplane. 30 years after the airplane, we had jetliners, and then from jetliners, we had people in space. Yuri Gagarin, you guys won. Yuri Gagarin, first man in space, apart from Laika the dog, of course. So that whole thing was incredibly disruptive. The world truly changed because the way that you move changed, the way that you communicated changed. Also in that time, they got the telephone, they got radio, they got television. Unbelievable amount of innovation within their lifetime. Our lifetime, the innovation that we've got that we're talking about is, hey, look at this amazing thing. If you slide your thumb down, it refreshes the screen. Oh, that's our innovation. That is shit. So this is the area that we're about to get true world-changing innovation. We're going to see this. In our lifetimes, we're going to see humanity change because we're about to be hit with some bioengineering stuff that's going to blow your mind. But I don't quite know how advertising people can take advantage of that unless we start using bioengineering to put logos in the backs of slugs. Or maybe in bird feathers. I don't know, something like that. Coca-Cola! Could be interesting. Nike birds. That would be good. So businesses are getting into this as well. If you've got a business that's got a turnover of less than $1 million, you can go on this site and invite people to invest in you to turn your business into something much bigger. And then this is something that Unilever are doing. They're finding that there's certain problems that it's just, they've not been able to solve, and they don't want to be throwing any more money at those problems. So they take those problems and they put them up on their site. So if any of you have some free time this weekend, they're looking for a red food coloring that doesn't change color within 9 months and is safe in foods. Any of you want to have a crack at that this weekend? They'll pay you money. So they're putting these problems out there for anyone to solve. So they're kind of using this crowdsourcing thing of handing over the problem to the amateurs, letting the amateurs solve it, and then pay them. Right, so that's the end of that one. The other thing is that education is groovy. People like education these days. Are you guys aware of TED? TED.com? Where you see lectures from the world's most incredible people. None of them are any more than 18 minutes, I believe. And you just absolutely mind-blowing. I go along here all the time to have my mind blown. It's one of my favorite places. I sort of use this as much as I use television. Universities now are putting their courses up online. So there's this site called edX. You can go along here and you can find a course from Harvard. You can find something from Berkeley, McGill, Australian National University. Really, really top universities. They're putting their courses up here. There's an interesting course I started to look at. Also on iTunes University, you find there's some great courses on there. You get video with some of them. You just get audio with some. You very often get course notes as well. So they give you PDFs that you can print out. That's your notes. So you can learn pretty much whatever you want. It's just that you can't get a qualification for it. You can learn it for free, but if you want the qualification, you're going to have to go to the university and pay. But that's still a very interesting model, because surely it's the information that's important. Then there's this here called Skillshare, and this is where people who've got some kind of ability will give their skills away online. And you buy a course for very little money indeed. A couple of months ago, for $12, I learned how to make meatballs. Yes, meatballs, ladies and gentlemen. And there's a meatballs shop in New York who love their meatballs. And they, over video, live, with lots of people watching, showed you how to make them. And then you'd to go away and make your meatballs. And the following week, you'd come back. And if you had any problems, they would try and help you through the problems. $12. My meatballs are delicious. So Code Academy is great as well. I know that Sergey's been looking at some Code Academy stuff. Has anyone here done some Code Academy? Anyone had a bash? You really should. If you want to have a go at some programming languages, this really gets you right in there, trying out programming languages. Also, I teach code as well. I teach people how to understand HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in one day. So I've got a one-day course on this. And I've got this site, onedaycodeschool.com. If you fancy going along there, you can actually play with code. I give you code that you can play with, and you can see how it changes as you play with it. So you've got a little box that you put your code in. There's a little computer on the screen. And as you change code here, you see the design change in the box. So there's also, I'm a really horrible father. I've got a 13-year-old daughter. And to get her pocket money every week, she has to do 3 lessons on Khan Academy. So Khan Academy's got lots of school lessons on there so that kids can learn stuff. One of the most interesting things about Khan Academy is that in America, there's some people, some schools that are turning education on its head. They're doing the opposite of what you'd expect. They're telling kids at home to do a Khan Academy lesson, to watch a video on how to do something on Khan Academy, and to do one of the courses, one of the exams on there. Then when they come into school, rather than being taught, they try it out in the classroom, and if they're having any problems, the teacher helps them. Now that actually makes a lot more sense, that the teacher is there for when they're actually doing the work and when they're making mistakes to make sure they're doing it correctly. And they're having a lot of success by turning education upside down and doing the homework in the classroom and doing the teaching at home. And I've got an idea that there's an opportunity for businesses, particularly businesses that have got some kind of proprietary knowledge, something like banking. There's things I don't really know how interest rates work with banks. I don't really know about how to invest money wisely. I don't really know about how to buy a house and what kind of mortgage to get. Now, I have got mortgages in the past, but I really don't understand them. And I think that organizations like banks should be doing a finance school to teach people how to make the right decision, to be responsible, and to know what they're doing before they buy the product. And there's lots of other companies that have got proprietary knowledge that should be sharing this online. I think there's a massive opportunity right now for education to actually educate people online, get brands to help in some way. Right, next one. Getting devices talking to each other. I told you already about how my watch will talk to my phone. So it connects to the internet through my phone. And that emails that I get go to my watch. So these two devices are talking to each other. Because there's a lot of people that think, hey, I'm doing something for mobile, therefore it's just on mobile. It starts and stops on mobile. I'm doing something that happens within a web browser. It starts and stops within the web browser. We need to think beyond that. There's actually incredible opportunities for thinking about how we can get things to work across devices. So I've told you about the watch. This is a lovely thing from France. I'll let you watch this.
The world is turning faster. Each day, we've more to do, to manage, to check, to control, to remember, to connect to achieve. Actually, all we need is one thing: more time. That's why Ford decided to win us a little time back with Ford key-free technology. No key, no stress, no loss of time. So we decided to show how useful Ford's key-free technology is in everyday life. Introducing Ford Key-Free Login, the first technology that automatically locks and unlocks your web accounts, so you don't have to waste time typing passwords anymore.
I mean, who even remembers all the different passwords? For key-free login is the easiest, fastest, and safest technology to log in and log out. Just go to Ford's website, download and install the key-free login software. It recognizes all the Bluetooth devices nearby. Select your smartphone, type your username and password for each account one last time. And that's it. Your smartphone is now the access key to every one of your accounts. Place your smartphone near your computer to unlock your account. Move it out of the room and automatically log off. Thanks to Ford key-free technology, there's no need to worry about keys and passwords ever again.
And I love that because it solves a problem. Because I don't remember all my usernames and passwords for things. But being able to, just because of Bluetooth, my computer knows if I'm within range with my phone. Because Bluetooth works a distance of about, I think it's about 10 meters. So from about here to maybe the second row there, that it detects. If I'm with that distance, it automatically logs me out of everything. And I think that's really interesting. Here's another one.
Here's how we cooked it up. The VIP fridge magnet is delivered directly to your door. It's loaded with your pizza preference based on your order history. Set it up once with your Bluetooth using any mobile on any platform, including that old Sony. Then you just push the button and enjoy your favorite pizza. An SMS confirms every order. If you make a mistake, you can cancel it easily. And if your favorite pizza changes, just reset your preference online. It's VIP pizza delivery. It's fun and simple.
This is the best thing ever. Has anyone out there ever had a pizza emergency?
It's like the Batman hotline for pizza.
Here's what I do with the VIP fridge magnet.
So it goes on a bit, but basically you've got this fridge magnet, you press it, it connects to your phone to send a message to the pizza place, sends you then your favorite pizza, because it knows where you live, it knows what your favorite pizza is, and it knows your credit card details. Now, what this did was it totally transformed this business. This was a little pizza shop. It really wasn't big. It was a little pizza shop in Dubai. They hardly had any money whatsoever. They spent it on this invention. Since then, they got so much custom that they've opened up, I believe, another 2 shops now in Dubai. And they've had offers to invest in their company to take them into other countries around the world. This one little invention that cost them a few $1,000s has totally transformed their business. And that's absolutely extraordinary, that something that's so cheap can be that transformative. I'm not going to let you watch that, but that's the thing that Adobe we're looking at, that you'll be able to use touch screens to connect with Photoshop, so that you could use this as like a paint palette to mix colors on, and then any colors that you mix on here then show up in your Photoshop palette, which is all right. There's another thing they're wanting to do, that they know that retouching with a mouse often isn't that good. So you'd be able to take a bit of your image if you wanted to do some fine retouching and throw it to your touch screen, so that you could use your finger to do the retouching, because it's far more accurate. There is actually another app that a designer showed me a couple of months ago. I can't remember the name of it. But if you're designing for mobile devices, in Photoshop you can connect, through this app, you can connect your mobile phone with Photoshop. You can export your screen directly to see a preview of it on here, and any design changes you make on Photoshop show up on here. So you can see if the fonts are big enough. You can see how it actually looks on the device, because that's a really difficult thing to do unless you're actually holding it in your hand to see how it works. So that speeds up the design process. So that's all about getting devices talking to each other. I've got the last slide there. I do coding, and when I'm coding stuff, I use this app called Coda. Coda works on my Mac, and it also works on my iPad. So when I'm designing stuff in here using code, I can see the updates here. So this is like a live preview, again, for my coding. So I can see everything that I'm doing on the iPad. And that's made everything so much easier that I'm actually able to see changes as they happen and go, no, that doesn't work, that looks horrible. Right. So last one, not last one, but one of the other ones. You've heard the phrase big data. Has everyone heard big data? Big data is a word that's being used a lot these days, or a term that's being used a lot these days. Most people don't actually understand what big data means. So I want to explain to you. Most people think there's one internet. There's not. There's actually 3 internets. According to the people that run the internet, there's 3 internets. The first one is the internet that we know. It's the internet of documents. The internet of documents is HTML documents, CSS documents, JavaScript documents, PHP documents, all this stuff that makes up a website. Okay, so everything we see is made up of documents. The HTML document links to other documents that you need, and then it builds the page. So it's called the internet of documents. The second one is the internet of things, which we've already kind of looked at. That's objects that are internet connected. So like the watch, like the shoes, like even the pizza box, they're internet of things, because these are objects that connect to the internet. And the last one is internet of data. So you're already familiar with that one. We've kind of looked at that one. So we've got documents, things, data. We're kind of looking at data here. So the term big data, people think it just means that there's loads and loads and loads of data. And yes, there is. In the last 2 years, we have created 90% of the data that we have. Now, that includes everything in libraries, everything that we've ever had throughout history, every piece of information. 90% of what we have today has been created in the last 2 years. That's nearly all of it. You know, that's unbelievable. Now, big data, what it actually means is that it's unstructured data. It means it's data that we cannot actually process, because we don't actually have the computing power or the knowledge how to process this data, because it's not really structured. It's things like your Instagram feed, like your Facebook stuff, like weather information. When you move around with your mobile phone, it connects to different transmitter masts. All that data is stored. That's what we think of as the exhaust pipe of data that comes out the back of our devices. 80% of the data that we have at the moment, 80% of it is what we call big data. That means that 80% of the data we have, we don't know what to do with. We have no understanding of how to process this. And the scary thing is that it's growing at 18 times the rate of structured data, which means that it'll be nearly all the data we have will be data we don't know what to do with. So this is a big conundrum that we have. What do we do with it? Do we get rid of some of this stuff? You see, an example of it would be the Hubble Space Telescope. Every single week, the Hubble Space Telescope generates 18 DVDs worth of data. Now that doesn't sound that much. You'd think that all the people who gaze at stars around the world would be able to deal with 18 DVDs worth of data, but it's not 18 films. You know, this is data. This is actually quite hefty stuff. Around the whole world, we can't even deal with 1 DVD's worth of data a week, which means that more than 17 DVD's worth of data we're not even looking at, we're not even processing, we don't know what to do with. It's just more than we can handle. So where do we put it? Well, we put it on servers. So these things are just storing more and more data that we don't know how to handle. We're growing data so fast that there's a ridiculous projection that someone made, that by 2020, we're going to need the whole of Australia to store all the servers that we have, and we're going to need 3 times the electricity we actually use in the world just to run them. Now, that's obviously nonsense, but it's kind of showing that we have an issue. What are we going to do with all of this data? There's some stuff we can look at. Do we put a sell-by date on it? Do we actually say that this data only lives for 6 months? Then it's useless and it self-destructs? Maybe. Or do we try and build systems that can actually do stuff with this data? This is one of my favorite visualizations of data, because data has become a big thing over the last few years. Now, you can tell which country this is, can't you? Yes. So it's the US. There's no map on here. This is airplanes. And each of those lines is 1 hour of an airplane journey. Okay, so this is just airplanes in this airspace. And they draw the map of the United States. But what becomes really interesting is when you do this over time. Watch this. So we're going to start here. It's at 5 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock at night. We've got 14,000 planes in the air, 13,000 planes in the air, 12,000 planes in the air. It's 9 o'clock at night now. It's going to start getting quiet around about midnight. It's 11 o'clock at night now. We've got 6,000 planes in the air. Right, here we go. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. It's pretty quiet. We're down to about 4,000 planes, 4,500 planes. Now, I want you to watch this. At 6 in the morning, we're going to watch sunrise go across the United States. Here we go. Right, so it's on the East Coast. We can see sun rise just by looking at the flights, because they're landing as the sun goes up. Now, the amazing thing is that Hawaii is over here. We're about to hit Hawaii. And when we hit Hawaii, here you go. You see all the lights coming on. And then, because that's the morning in Hawaii, and they start to go into the United States. The amazing stuff is that you can tell so much about this. Just the last time that I put this film on, I spotted that there's 2 black holes here. There's nothing. And then I remembered that's desert. There's no airports there. That's why there's nothing. So it's incredible how much stories we can tell with data. I get something new out of that just about every single time. Just being able to see the data visualized in that way. And data visualization has become pretty trendy in the last few years, but it's amazingly powerful, being able to communicate in visuals, because we can communicate much faster visually than we can with words. So what we can do with data, how do we use it? Well, you actually if you want to get a story, it's good to take 2 different data sets and to try and smoosh them together to see what we get. So we take data set 1, data set 2, and that bit in the middle, this is our opportunity to do something interesting, to tell a story. So for example, in London, if I take the geolocation, the map references for kebab shops in London. Really crap food, okay? Smelly, stinky, horrible crap food. And I take the data for buses that pass through those areas. Then what that does is that identifies the buses that I don't want to be on after 11 o'clock at night when drunk people eat kebabs. So it starts to give me information, useful stuff, and starts to tell a story. Right, so internet is everywhere. As I've told you, it's on that device. It's on TVs as well now. You know, when we're presenting stuff to clients, I find that a lot of agencies, when they're sort of saying, here's some web stuff we've come up with, they then show a printout of a website. Here's a website. Here's how it looks on a laptop. Here's how it looks on a tablet. Here's how it looks on a mobile device. And they show the sort of 3 different screens for the website, printed out. Don't really quite get that. But what we're finding is there's more screens for us to consider, because we're getting smaller and we're getting bigger. At the moment, there are 8 different internet standards for television. So Samsung have got one. So this is a Samsung. They've got their smart hub. And it runs on an Android kind of thing. We've got 8 different systems at the moment, and we're about to get another 2 big ones, it seems, by the end of the year. Apple are supposed to be bringing out a TV by the end of the year, and so are Intel. Now that would be 10 standards. we were promised that the whole thing about internet television was that you'd be able to watch a film and be able to go, oh, I'm going to buy that jacket. I'm going to buy those shoes when you're watching it. Because you're able to connect from what's happening on the screen to the internet. Not a single one of the standards we have at the moment allows you to do that. They're nowhere near. Instead, what they've gone down is they've made a bit of a mistake, and they've kind of confused televisions with as being really, 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 really big mobile phones, which of course they're not. So we're ending up with app icons on our televisions. That's fucked up. The whole thing is just wrong. Internet television is so entirely wrong at the moment. We have another thing that's happened is that with mobile devices, we've kind of got it down to two different options. So we've got Apple and we've got Android. But you change your phone every year or every year and a half. So it's actually, there's quite a lot of cycles of innovation. There's a lot of cycles of evolution that can happen then. That's where they're finding that creatures that have got short lifespans and reproduce quickly can evolve really quickly. But creatures that get long lifespans evolve a lot more slowly. Our phones have got a lifespan of a year and a half. Our televisions have got a lifespan of 10 years. Which means that we're kind of at least 10 years away from having a proper standard for internet television. At least 10 years for the next stage of the evolution. We're nowhere near getting this sorted out. Internet television, the big promise that they've given us is falling flat on its face. But we have to be thinking what we can do with this kind of technology. So, we've also got internet out and about on posters. So here's a poster that you can connect to Facebook through the poster. I don't know who on earth would ever do that, but there we go, we can do it. And then here's a t-shirt that can connect to the internet.
Are we on? Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Ryan from Cube Circuit. We make interactive clothing, gowns that light up red carpets, shirts that hug you via text. Valentine's approached us to work in partnership with them on creating a new way to leave an impression. The idea is to innovate the t-shirt, the original canvas of personal expression, by connecting it to the internet. It's called T-Shirt OS. The first wearable, shareable, programmable t-shirt, 100% cotton platform for digital creativity. The t-shirt has always been about leaving an impression, a creative canvas, the status update before the status update existed. The original like button. Our goal is to develop the world's first commercially available digital t-shirt, put it in your hands and over your bodies so you can go out there and leave an impression. If we can do it, would you want one? It's loaded with apps and tools. As big an LED screen as we can get. Camera, microphone, accelerometer, and sound. All controlled from a big brain in the phone. Via a small brain in the t-shirt. Connect that to the internet. And you have T-Shirt OS. So let's think of some stuff to do. Start simple. Connect the t-shirt to Twitter, display tweets, your tweets, other tweets, hashtag tweets. Fun, dangerous, potentially embarrassing. Share tracks, covers, playlists, dance to the beat. Or give your t-shirt free rein to take photos and post them straight to your Instagram feed. T-Shirt OS is a platform for you to express yourself. This is what the tech can do. The story it tells is up to you. Which brings us back to that question, would you want one? This is a prototype, a one-off, so it costs quite a bit. But if enough of you want it, then we can make it for less. It's a demand supply bulk buy type thing.
So how many people would want an internet-connected t-shirt? Really? I'm wearing internet-connected socks right now. Tweets are coming in live as we speak. This, a video screen on your chest that people can tweet to. No, if I'd be up for that. But it's interesting. It's not so much really about this product itself, but just about the fact that we can put the internet into just about everything. So, I mean, if it's come to Internet of Things, we could make this coffee cup connected to the internet. You could have a little screen on there, and people could send me messages according to what's on that. You could, through proximity to my phone, it would kind of understand that it was me. There could be sensors in here that would know what temperature the drink is in there, what color it is, whether I've got any milk in there, how many sugars there are, what temperature it is, how full it is. Is there at some point where I'm taking small sips because it's hot? What temperature does it hit when I start taking bigger sips because it's just the right temperature? You start to get interesting stories. That's the sort of data side of things. But we have to think beyond devices. So we're still showing clients laptop, tablet, and mobile phone. And to be honest, fantastic that we are, because 5 years ago, agencies weren't doing that. 3 years ago, most agencies weren't doing that. But we need to think beyond devices. And actually, what I recommend is that we don't think about devices at all. But instead, we think about moments. We think about the times that people are using the device and how we can add value to them in that moment. So that might be, for example, if you've got a website, with HTML5 technology, we can know someone's location. We can ask them to share their location. Or if you've got an app, we can just get their location anyway. We ask once, and then we've got it. So if there's an app here that's from my bank, it uses GPS. As soon as I have it switched on, it knows where I am. If I'm in a bank, if I'm in one of their banks, they know where I am, and they can make it particularly useful for that exact moment that I'm in the bank. If it knows I'm at home, it knows the kind of stuff I want to do at home, so it actually might help me pay bills and do things that are particularly for where I am at home. Using GPS, it could know when I'm in a supermarket or I'm in a shopping mall, and it gives me information based around that. So for example, it knows I'm in a shopping mall. It could know also that I'm spending money, so it could send me an alert to say, look, you've got money coming out next week. You've actually only got £63 to spend, or else you're going to go over your bank balance. So it could know that information based on my location and give me information based on that. Now that's thinking about moments. That's not thinking about technology. To be honest, ignore technology. That could be coming in through my watch. That could be knowing that I'm walking past a poster because it knows that I've got my mobile phone in there, and it detects who I am because of that and gives me information. You know, there's so much stuff we could do based around those trends. My spotlight's gone off. I think it's time to move outside, is it? So we have to stop thinking of devices and start thinking of moments. And it can be moments that are to do with where you are just now, or it can be moments that are based on where you are in a purchase cycle. So if you're buying a product, and it might know that the moment that you're in, you're expecting that product to be delivered right now. So it can give you information based on that. So it's all about adding value through what we understand about the user, rather than going, yeah, we're doing a mobile thing. Hey, it's cool, huh? So last one is that technology is getting to know us, to recognize us. And this kind of comes from something that somebody discovered 3 weeks ago. Apple have got a patent which is about face recognition technology, so that if you want to unlock your phone, you just hold it up and look at it, it recognizes your face, and it unlocks your phone. Right, this is just a patent at the moment. So they're not actually doing it. But you know what's really pathetic is Samsung did this 1.5 years ago. Actually, the Galaxy S3, I think it is, maybe the S2, actually had facial recognition technology built into it. And you could use it to unlock your phone. Apple are just patenting it now. Another thing that Apple have patented last year was that you'd be able to get a fingerprint reader in, so that when you're sliding across to open your iPhone, that it reads your fingerprint while you do it, so to make sure that you're the right person to open that phone. Samsung in their latest phone, have got eye tracking in the camera, so that when you're reading and you get to the bottom of the page for what you're reading, it automatically scrolls down because it knows you're reaching the bottom of the page. So it scrolls for you. I mean, isn't that the ultimate in laziness? It's brilliant that you can't even do that down a screen. Goodness. And the Xbox, the Kinect. When you're using the Kinect with your Xbox, you don't have to get the remote control and go, right, where's my profile? Ah, it's there, select Dave. Right, okay. You don't have to do that. You just walk in front of it. It recognizes your face, it recognizes your body, recognizes your shape, and it automatically loads up. So this is something that's going to be happening more and more, is that technology will be understanding us, and it will be using sort of bio information to tailor things to us. So for example, we're able to tell from the way that somebody's typing, the speed they're typing, what mood they're in. That's been around for years, that you've been able to see if somebody's happy or if somebody's angry based on how they're typing, the rhythm on the keys. So you could change the environment that your computer is. The desktop pattern could change if you see that somebody's angry. That it could just give, could give little soothing sounds and make it just a sort of make everything just a little bit fuzzy and warm. Whereas if you're maybe a bit relaxed, then it can try and focus you down on things a bit more. So we've missed lots of stuff, but I've already been talking for over an hour. Let's get past that. Come on. Yep. Yep. So that's me. I know it's getting hot and sweaty in here, but does anyone have any questions about any of this stuff? It's all right if you don't. We can all just try that creativity experiment and sort of get the beers out. All right. Yes? Yeah.
Microphone or something?
Yes, go for it. Beatbox.
Well, for the last, I think, 5 years, there are a lot of technologies that make in our life much easier, just like the things that you are talking about with the face recognition, authorization, and so on. And on the one side, it makes our life much easier. Well, it's pretty nice to have a thing that will recognize you not by the password, but by your face. But don't you think that it's creating one more trend, actually, because the more technologies that helps us to improve our lives we have, the less control of our life we have.
Yes.
And how does this trend will change our life, you think? Because it's some kind of meta trend, a trend that rises to another trend, because we are still talking about the trends. If we are talking about innovations, there's something that will happen, and it's going faster and faster. Now we're talking about things that make our life easier, and we're already thinking about things that from one side it make it's easier, but it's on the other side it make it much harder.
Yeah.
Well,
it's one of the things that technology, we've seen whenever a new technology comes around, telephone, there was lots of people who were really worried about what was going to happen with the telephone. People were going to lose their manners. No one was going to write letters. But what happened is that the telephone ended up just being an additional thing in our life and ended up helping us in situations. And it didn't stop people necessarily being polite, not in the short term. Television was thought to be the sort of the death of the human race by many people at the time. So we always point at stuff, new technology, and sort of say it's going to be bad for us. But I would say that I believe that it's probably the responsibility of governments to have somebody who's maybe a digital philosopher or somebody who's into ethics to be looking to see what is the effect that this technology is going to have on the human race. One of the things that we don't know at the moment is that we've gone from an age of scarcity. When I was a child, there were 2 television channels in the UK, 2 television channels, and they both finished at midnight. So it was an age of scarcity. I was a kid wanting to watch telly. There was maybe an hour, 2 hours a day that there was children's television programs on television. My daughter's generation can watch whatever episode of whatever show she wants at whatever time on whatever device. So we've gone from an age of scarcity to an age of overabundance, total access. We've also gone from an age of having to remember stuff. When I was at school, you had to memorize things. So you had to memorize dates for history. You had to memorize the names of kings. These days, it doesn't really make sense doing that because you just search for it. Why'd you have to remember stuff when you can search? Why'd you fill your mind up with that crap? So we don't know what the long-term effects are. If this is going to be a bad thing for the generation who haven't had to remember things, or if it's going to be a bad thing for the generation that just gets whatever they want at whatever time. It could be a bad thing, it could be a good thing, it's probably both. And I think we should be looking at this. I think that there should be people whose job it is actually to look at this stuff and ask the questions and try and work out what is the effect that will happen. Is that technology good or is it bad? Google brought out Google Goggles a couple of years ago. And Google Goggles means that you'll be able to take a picture of anything. It's already built into Google search engine now, but it was a separate thing at the time. You could take a picture of anything, it would recognize the picture, and it would search online based on the picture. But this was so powerful that I could take a picture of your face, and it would search online, and it would find pictures of you on the internet. It was that good. And I'd be able to go, right, I'm some dangerous stalker who wants to mug you and steal all your money. Right, so all I need to do is I've seen you on the underground. I take your picture. I've been following you, so I know a little bit about you, okay? I can look on Facebook. I can find out what your name is. From that, I can then see on LinkedIn where you work. So I can pretend I've seen your patterns of where you go. So I can pretend that you're someone because through Foursquare, I've seen what pubs you hang out in. So I can pretend that I'm someone that you met at that pub and befriend you on Facebook. I can follow you on Twitter because I know who you are as well there. I can look at your photographs and I can see if there's anything in your house that's worth stealing. Now, I then know from Facebook your update that you're not at home at the moment. You're out at the cinema. And I know that you've got a really nice television. So I'm going to go and steal it. And if the next door neighbors ask me, then I say, well, I'm his friend. And I can start mentioning your family. All sorts of information. I know him. Obviously, that was dangerous. I could kind of do that anyway, but Google Goggles made it kind of easier. Obviously, that's dangerous. So Google stopped that part of the program. So that part is disabled. You can't take pictures of people's faces anymore and see that stuff on the internet. So they disabled that pretty quickly. But that was because they had to ask the question, is this right? What can go wrong with this? And they found that so much could go wrong with that piece of technology, they had to disable part of it. So I don't know if that answers the question, but basically, think of it in terms of Eastern philosophy. There's yin and there's yang. For every bit of good, there's a bit of bad. It all balances out. And that's kind of what the internet does. It's great in some ways, but it's awful in others. Because any piece of technology has got good and bad associated with it. So advertising in itself isn't evil, but some people can use it for evil means. Same with any technology. Anyone else got any questions, or shall we say thank you very much indeed for, oh, you get another one. Another one. Oh, hold on. Sorry.
Sorry for monopolizing this. Okay. In general, there are two questions that I always ask digital specialists and those guys who think about future and technologies. In my mind, there are two big things that actually stops our innovative, not just thinking, but innovative progress. According to mobile devices, there are two pretty simple things. One thing is battery. I mean, that's 5 years ago, I didn't even think about charging my phone every night. Now I have to do it every 12 hours. and nothing has changed in this thing. I mean, the next iPhone will live much less amount of time, I'm sure. And the second thing is the internet. You said that internet now is everywhere, but in de facto not. I mean, that's in the city, okay, but when you go down to subway, it's not that internet. When you go to countryside, it's not that internet. I mean, you can tweet, but you feel like in 1999 with the modem connection and so on, because you can't watch YouTube videos. The fact is that internet is not it's not so fast. It's not the internet that we dreamed about, I don't know, 5 years ago, thinking about the future right now. I mean, that's the innovation and technologies, they have real barriers, physical barriers that we can't overcome right now. And this is like rain. You can't just stop the rain. It's just a simple thing from the real physical world. My real question is that, do you see other barriers from your point of view, from your I don't know, the level that you are creating ideas right now? So that's a question, actually.
Sure. I mean, you're right. I mean, the barriers. Mobile internet is awful. It's a terrible thing in just about any country you go to, unless you're in Southeast Asia, where it is so fast it's ridiculous. So I know that Russia is quite a divided country in terms of where you have technology and where you don't have technology. But I know it's starting to catch up, but certainly out in the countryside, there's an awful lot less people connected to the internet than there are in the cities. Your first question was about battery life. Absolutely. This is absolutely ridiculous how bad the battery life is. I've actually got an extra battery within my case here. So once my battery's dead in my phone, I flick a switch and it recharges it. So I get 2 battery lives out of this. And that lasts me a day. And that is ridiculous. So that is one of the big areas. And they are looking very much at battery life. But the biggest barrier to innovation is the human race. We are really substandard species. We are a species that go, yeah, we've solved that problem, we're done, move on to the next thing, rather than trying to come up with a better solution to the problem. We solved transportation by coming up with a combustion engine. The combustion engine has always been a pile of crap. We've had it for over 100 years. At its very, very best, the combustion engine is up to about 70% efficient. And we, during that time, haven't really been investing in trying to find an alternative to the combustion engine. Not any sort of serious investment in it, not any sort of serious push. And why is it that we just accept stuff and go, well, we've got that way of doing it, we're going to use this horrible, dirty fuel that's killing the earth. Let's just keep going with that, it's fine. So it's actually humankind, we are our own worst enemy. We are our own big problem, because we just accept things and just go, that's fine, let's just keep going with that, rather than trying to come up with something better. And I think that's actually, we need to enter an age of reinvention. So actually looking at stuff that's already been developed and going, right, can we beat that? How do we do something better? So we actually have to go through a process of reinvention around the stuff. But that's a lot bigger than advertising stuff. That is a whole philosophy for the human race, I believe. Right, I think we probably better end it there. We're down to about half the numbers. They all sort of dribbled out when I had my back turned there. So thank you all very much for coming along and for staying so much. Thank you.